All right, and as Mr. Zeller reminded us, we are here at Nazareth College this evening. And our first question has to do with students, fittingly. And Mr. Reed, you'll start us off. We have in this area had quite a problem over the years with young professionals, college graduates, leaving the area, seeking opportunity elsewhere. If elected, what can you do to encourage local college graduates to stay in this area? You have 2 minutes.
Well, I think the first thing we have to focus on is that we have to recognize that the government itself cannot create jobs. What the government can do is create an environment upon which jobs can be created. That's a philosophy that we hold near and dear to our heart. Because what we're talking about, and as the mayor, former mayor of the city of Corning, I can tell you we saw those friends, neighbors, colleagues, peers of mine leaving in droves because there's no opportunity there. We're also seeing a troublesome thing occur with our seniors going over the border. We're 20 minutes away from the border of Pennsylvania because they couldn't live within the property tax burden that was being placed upon them. So they were leaving the state. We were losing it on both ends. So what we have to do is recognize, in my opinion, that it's the private sector that has to be unleashed. How do we do that? What we have to do is make sure that we cut the spending at the federal level so that we get to a balanced budget state eventually. We send a sound message to the economic world that we are serious about getting our fiscal house in order. Then what we do is make sure that we don't enact big government policies where government is going to become bigger and bigger. Obamacare is an example of that policy that was enacted recently. Policies such as cap and trade that we oppose. Those types of policies send a chilling effect to the private sector. As I have talked with numerous CEOs on the campaign trail and owners of small businesses, they don't know what's coming down the pipeline. They don't know what their tax burden is going to be. They don't know what their regulatory burden is going to be. So they're staying on the sidelines because they don't know if they can go out and invest in their capital into their business and grow them for generations to come. We stabilize the economy, stabilize our policies, the private sector will be unleashed. That will provide the opportunity for students to be here for long term and generations to come.
All right, Mr. Reed, thank you. Mr. Zeller, you have 2 minutes.
We need an actual plan to get you folks back to work. We're standing in the middle of Rochester. Economies are like bodies. Our heart used to be Kodak. When Kodak gutted its workforce, that heart died. And we've seen what it's done to our community. So we need the students in these audience to actually have an economy that they can work in. Clean energy is what I believe that economy is going to be. Clean energy is going to be the industrial revolution of the 21st century. Clean energy is everything from how we produce energy, to how we consume energy, to how we distribute and store energy. My belief is that if we can foster an environment in which businesses can actually thrive in this coming economy, because make no difference about it, this is going to be the industrial revolution of the 21st century, we can put people in this room back to work. So how do we do that? One, we have to start making things again. We have to start making things that the world wants to buy from us. Two, we have got to stop outsourcing. We have to realize that our current tax policy, your tax dollars, are actually used to send your jobs overseas. Your tax dollars are used to subsidize the closing cost of plants. That has got to stop. We need to reward American companies to remain here and to bring business back to the United States. And the third thing is we have to make sure that students in this audience tonight do not graduate, as I did from college, with $100,000 in debt, a mortgage without the house. We need to be able to set you up for success in the future. I have a plan to do that. We do not need soundbite solutions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Zeller. Mr. Reed, you have 1 minute to go.
The whole problem is for the government to step forward and try to put forward that type of agenda. We don't have the money. We don't have the ability to do that. We have to get our fiscal house in order. So if you're talking about taking over and funding higher education at the government level, we don't have the money to do that, ladies and gentlemen. And I'll be honest with you. That's what we are. That's what we will always be. You know, today we've traveled from, I was over in Randolph talking to a junior and senior that's over near Jamestown on the far end of the district. We put over 74,000 miles on the car. This is our 8th debate. what we have to realize is we philosophically have to change the way we do business in this nation. And that philosophical change has to make sure that we focus on the private sector. Government has to be tailored back. And once we unleash the private sector again, that opportunity will be here for years to come.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. Mr. Zeller,
you know, I've driven around this district a lot, and with all due respect, Tom, I found most folks don't care about how many miles they put on the car. They want to know how they're going to get back to work. And I don't advocate the government take over the student loan practice. I actually advocate what Milton Friedman, Ronald Reagan's chief economic advisor, suggested, which was that we allow students to have their loans repaid back through the wealth of their income. It's called an income-based repayment system. It works in Australia, New Zealand, and the English are about to adopt it. What they found is that it substantially eases the debt level and the burden that's placed on our students. Folks, in this room tonight, listening at home, there could be another person who wants to found the next Apple, the next Google. Imagine if Steve Jobs had showed up to a bank and said, I got a great idea that's going to change the world. I just need $20,000 to start this business. And the bank had said, I'm sorry, your debt-to-income ratio is just too high. We can't give you the loan. That's happening right now. There are Americans who could create companies that are not getting their business loans, but yet their Chinese counterparts are. And for the students in this audience who want to put this in a realistic perspective, $100,000 in debt is 360 iPads for the next 30 years.
Mr. Zeller, thank you. All right. Actually, I'm going to skip a question since we're talking about student loans. What we know is that a lot of people in this economy are having to go back to school. A lot of students are choosing to continue going to school to make themselves more marketable in today's job market. So what steps can be taken to reduce the burden of student loans for citizens who are in those circumstances? And Mr. Zeller, you will go first on this.
Sure. So my
2
plan,
minutes.
My plan is an income-based repayment program, and here's how it works. You graduate from college, you choose to drop out, whatever. When you enter the labor force, if you currently have a bank loan, the bank doesn't care if you're employed or not. You have to pay back at a monthly rate. Now, as I said before, my payments are around $800 a month. I have $100,000 in debt. It wasn't that I was fiscally irresponsible, just college is that expensive these days. That's an iPad a month for the next 30 years of my life. I don't think most students in America can afford that. What I'd rather have them do is that rather than have a bank payment that is arbitrary and has no condition on your income, Friedman advocated it's kind of like a Social Security tax. We add something onto your payroll so that you're paying at 8 to 10% of your income. And the incentive is uniquely American. Go out and work hard. Unleash that private sector. Make a lot of money. The faster you make money, the more you're making, the quicker you pay off your debt to society, and the faster you get back to a lower tax income bracket once you've paid off your debt. This works. We have to have this. There's so much debt held right now in the form of student loans that there's more debt held by banks in student loans than there is in credit cards. And unlike credit cards, student loan debt is not transferable through bankruptcy court, thanks to the Bush administration. We have to start talking about this. This has to be something we're talking because this is going to affect my generation's ability to buy homes, our ability to start companies, our ability to buy cars. It could even affect our birth rate. When my fiance and I talk about wanting to have children, we talk about it from the perspective of, can we afford this? Rather than, are we that in love to have a family? That should not be how we're making family planning decisions going forward. We have to start coming up with a creative solution, and I actually have a plan to do that.
All right, thank you, Mr. Zeller. Mr. Reed, you have 2 minutes.
What I would say is, first of all, I have to address Matt's proposal. It is bigger government. Someone's going to have to administer that program. Someone's going to have to fund that program. We don't come at this election, we don't come at this position with that philosophy. We come with a philosophy that government should be limited and cut back wherever possible. You likened it to Social Security. Social Security is a great program, but look what's happened. It's bankrupt. And why would we want to go down another program of bigger government that's going to get to a situation where it could potentially bankrupt itself as well as the nation, and take on that fiscal responsibility? Now, I am a strong advocate. My kids are in this room. They are going to college. My mom raised, there was 12 of us in our household. I was youngest of 12. She made sure each and every one of us had an education. I also have that mortgage on my head. I went to law school. We had to pay for it out of our own pocket. We made the investment. I still pay that monthly check. well over $100,000. I understand that that's a burden. I understand that it impacts you personally in your personal decisions. We've been there, my wife and I. My wife waited tables as we were going and starting off our businesses. She worked at the hospital for the night shift. We started from nothing. Bottom line is this: we must get back to a society that relies on the individuals to be accountable and responsible for themselves. To stand up here and say we're going to take care of all your problems is not a philosophy that we advocate. It is not a philosophy we're going to take to Washington, D.C. And I, with all due respect, I think the miles on the car demonstrate something. It demonstrates that we are committed to doing the work ethic of this job. Some people have asked me, why are you doing so many debates? Why are you standing up and having 11 debates when it's all said and done with your opponent? Because we're not afraid. We believe in what we're doing, and when we become your next House of Representative member, we will have that work ethic day in and day out. Thank you very much.